everybody. Welcome to another comic episode of Games My Mom Found. I am Mike Albertin. Who's with me tonight?
This is Kenneth Sanity, once again returning for another comic episode.
Well, thank you for coming back. This one's a little more political than the last time you joined.
Oh, just a little bit.
And before we get too far, I do want to give a quick disclaimer. This episode is going to get political. We're going to talk about racism. We're going to talk about sexism. We're going to talk about the 1980s, the 1980s, and today. So, it's because we're talking about an X-Men book, and that's all going to be involved in this book. So I just want to give a quick disclaimer. If you don't want to hear anything political, well, you might not want to stick around too long. But it fits the book, and I promise everything will be to go along with the book is trying to tell us, not just us being ourselves. It's about the book, about the X-Men. And if you don't know the X-Men, when the X-Men are made about racism, then I don't know where you've been for the last 50 years. So that's all I got to say. And I should introduce what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the graphic novel from 1982, X-Men, God Loves, Man Kills. That written by Chris Claremont, artist was Brent Anderson. And this wasn't part of the canon of X-Men for a long time. But it technically takes place between Uncanny X-Men 167 and 168. Technically, I guess. Because they did eventually put this in the canon. So.
Oh, see, I always thought this was just non-canon, but it's good to know that it is canon.
It was till 2003 when the second X-Men film was released, and that's when they made a sequel series to this in Extreme X-Men.
The second X-Men film, you mean X2, the best Fox X-Men film?
Yes.
Marvelous.
Which I have not seen in years.
It still holds up. I did watch it after I finished reading this.
I'm waiting to watch all the X-Men movies because at some point, once we finish the MCU on this show, I want to go through the X-Men movies and do those too.
Oh.
So we'll see if that happens, because when I started the MCU, I did not anticipate how much of a truck that was going to be. So we shall see. That was a hell of a decision. All right. So, Kenneth, I know this is your first time reading this. This was actually my third time reading this book, unfortunately. Just to get it out there, since it probably will come up at some point in our conversation, this is another one of our redo episodes where, due to technical difficulties, I lost 7 episodes. So, just for you guys are aware, listening. I gotta say that this book comes out of the gate just ready to punch.
Oh my God. It is out of the bell rings and it comes out swinging like George Foreman in its prime.
That hit me every time. Every time I read this book, and the first page you have two black kids that are running from somebody with guns. They're in their pajamas. They talk about how their parents had just been killed. Their parents had just been killed, and they're running, and one gets shot in a playground. And
yep. The brother is 11 and the sister just turned 9. These are two very young children. And it's probably not an accident that they were depicted as 2 young black children.
No, completely
running from a group of white people. Jesus.
Yeah, that's not accidental here. But I mean, it's powerful. I mean, it would have been powerful in the 80s, and it's still so powerful. And you see them, they just gun down these kids. And again, they gun them down, as they show, not because they're black, because they're mute. But again, you still have that racism right there. You have that whole motive that they're going for. And it hits hard. It is just
so hard, and most of it is set, the coloring on it is very blue toned. It takes place at night. It's dark, and there are 3 scenes of color, full color, in the first 2 pages. One is when the little girl's mutant power is activating, or the little boy, I can't really tell, it's just close-up on eyes. And then there are 2 gunshots, and that's the end of the children.
And then to make it even worse, and to make it more political, what I felt like it was really a reference to the civil rights movement, they take the 2 kids and they hang them up on the swing set, and then write "Muty" across them on a sign on their dead bodies. And it's just to me, that felt like such a reminiscent of what was going on in the civil rights movement. That's what they were trying to go for. Oh my God, yes. This is very much just a playground set lynching. I mean, that's really what that was depicting. And then the worst person in the world to find them finds them. Magneto.
Magneto shows up, rips the shreds that are holding them up just apart, and places them very lovingly down on a platform. And for Magneto to find 2 mutants that were killed by humans, oh God.
But I think that's one thing that's also powerful about this, is because Magneto and Xavier, for those that don't know the X-Men, are very much 2 sides of the same coin, in a sense where they both want freedom for the mutants, and they want equal for the mutants, and they're just going about it 2 different ways. because of the atrocities that were witnessed, in the 1930s, 1940s with World War II and Hitler. And I think that that's such a fundamental thing to kind of think about when you're looking at here too. And he was seeing, stuff, and he mentions it throughout this book. He's like, I've seen what these kind of people can do. You can't trust them. And I like that. Magneto's a really character you can connect with in this book though too.
Oh yeah, I think he's more humanized in this book than I've seen him in this time period. And I don't remember who said it, but somebody once had mentioned that when it comes to mutant kind, and it's not a perfect analogy because both Professor X and Magneto are white, but someone once said that Professor X is more like Martin Luther King Jr., and Magneto is more like Malcolm X. And
I've heard that comparison too.
Yeah, and you can understand it because, Martin Luther King Jr. was very much, I'm not going to say that he was all for nonviolence, but a lot of his protests were aimed at trying to change minds, where Malcolm X was very by any means necessary. And that right there really kind of encapsulates, Charles Xavier and Magneto.
Hey, that's probably what they were based on too. I wouldn't be surprised as it was around that time when, when the X-Men first came about.
Yeah, and Stan Lee's never been, one for being quiet about, racists being not cool.
1963 was the first X-Men, so yeah. Civil rights movement for the 50s, if I remember correctly?
Late 50s, early 60s.
Okay,
really,
so definitely
I think
right
is when
around
it
that
started to heat up.
So right around that time.
But I am not a student of history. I don't remember dates.
I am a student of history, and I like history, but I know wars better than I know civil rights movements.
Fair enough.
I actually know World War II better than other stuff, but that's neither here nor there right now. So it's just such a powerful opening of a book, and I love how they really make you feel for Magneto, and then the villain of this book is William Stryker, which a lot of those probably know him in X-Men. X2 would have been his first, movie appearance before, the character really took off from there. But in this, he doesn't start off as an army general. He's a preacher. And
the worst kind of preacher, the preacher who has the attention of the nation, he's basically like a kind of amalgam of Billy Graham and those very successful televangelists at the time, the ones who were whipping up media frenzy and just saying the worst things in the world while wrapped in a cloak of God.
I mean, one thing why this book resonated with me, because I'm very anti-organized religion. I believe in God. I believe that there's an afterlife. I believe in all that, but I don't like organized religion. There's things like in this book, which happen in real life, where people use scripture and use, in quotation, holy words to manipulate people to their own, what they want, and to their own means, even though they think I'm doing it for God. No, you're not. And so it makes this, I hate this character. I hate him with a passion.
Oh, I despise this character. He's racist, he's abusive, and I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty damn funny that back in, God, what year was this, 82?
82.
We have the evangelist character looking exactly like Vice President Mike Pence.
Oh, I should say we are recording this on October 3rd of 2020 in case things are different by the time you hear this in 2021. This might come out.
Yes.
So I've got to state that right there.
I hope that by the time people are listening to this, if they hear it post 2020, I can say former Vice President Mike Pence.
I hope so, too.
Oh, God.
But yeah, no, it's not the first person that said that. People have made that joke that looks just like Mike Pence. There's a famous scene in this book where he points an Akron and goes, "You call that a human?" And I know people have made fun about Mike Pence about that because it does look like him.
Yeah, and it's something you could see him doing because Mike Pence also wraps himself in the cloak of righteousness. And it's just, why? Why do all of these people, both, politics in the 80s, 90s, now, all feel like they're doing what they're doing for the betterment of humankind while wrapped in a cloak of faux righteousness?
Because it helps them justify what they're doing. Same thing with the Crusades. The Crusades were terrible, but they saw, we're doing it for God. No, you're doing it for fucking treasure, you idiots. It was nothing to do with this. It was all about land and treasure and looting and killing. And it's the idea that when you villainize something, like in this case, you villainize the mutants, you say, well, they're not human. They're not equal. They're nothing. You give yourself the right then that whatever any hate any murder, anything that you're doing to these people, it's okay because they're not real. And that's what I think is so interesting, like with this, that they're constantly going throughout this book where they're like, oh, the mutants are bad, the mutants are this, to justify their hatred towards them.
Yeah, and it's disgusting.
Oh, I do want to ask, like when you have Stryker talk, and he goes and he talks about who the X-Men are, were you as confused as I was? And they said Ariel, able to phase her through body through stuff. I'm like, Ariel? Who the fuck is Ariel? I mean, I know who it is, but
yeah, I mean that took me a while but I feel like I was like, wait a minute. Okay, so I did a little thinking back in my brain. I didn't actually research it, but I was like, I'm sure that's what they called. That was like
very
Pride's fancy X-Men name
for a very small amount of time.
Yeah.
Because she's Shadowcat mainly, but for some reason in this book, she's Ariel.
Maybe that's the reason why it's non-canon. Who knows?
She did use Ariel a couple times in the books, too, because I remember when we recorded this the first time, I had an X-Men expert on the show, guy who read a lot of X-Men comics, and he had mentioned about how it was her name for a little bit, off and on. I don't like it, because I just like her normal uniform. I like Shadowcat. I like Kitty Pryde as that, but still. So that's what that was. I just wanted it threw me off completely the first time I read this book.
A little bit, but I had to go back in the memory. I will say though that outfit is just 80s-tastic. Mwah! Chef's kiss.
Yeah, it's 80s.
So 80s, I love it.
And also one thing I like about the book, it has two of my favorite X-Men, Nightcrawler and Colossus.
And you can't those two you can't mess with. Like they're both so good.
Again, Pride of the X-Men is a big reason why I like those characters.
Understandably.
that old cartoon that never got off the ground. So this book also starts off once you get introduced to these characters and then you see, I think it's Kitty Pryde fighting with some guy because he's calling at a dance studio because he's calling mutants, scum essentially.
Yep, just horrible people.
And I didn't notice this, but did you notice Kitty Pryde is wearing the Jewish star on her neck?
Oh yeah, I noticed that big time. They were not shy about putting that on there, wearing a Star of David.
Yeah, okay, I couldn't remember the name, but I like that. And as she's fighting with this guy, and she's telling the instructor why she did it, she's like, "Well, I swung first," and because he was like, "I was just talking about the Stryker Crusade and all the good it does." Well, mutants are evil; they deserve whatever they get, and it's just that whole thing. About what this guy was able to do, Stryker's able to get to these people. He's able to reach them. He's able to make them think this, and they start believing it. And the more people they tell, the more people that will end up believing it. As I always love the famous quote by Joseph Goebbels: "If you tell a lie big enough and tell it enough times, it becomes the truth." And I feel like that's anyone who's very good at manipulating, whether you be a president, a senator, an evangelist, whether you just be a toxic girlfriend or toxic boyfriend, like that works for anyone.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's basically almost gaslighting a nation. And I don't know, man, this whole Stryker thing, it reminds me of somebody, like I feel like Stryker is going to be big on draining the swamp. He's just telling people what it is, how it is, in real talk. That's the way real people talk. If this, in an alternate universe, Stryker probably would have gotten voted president, honestly.
Hey, Lex Luthor became president in DC Comics, so hey, anything's possible, right?
Yeah.
But I also, when she's talking to the instructor and she's telling him, "Hey, they're just words can't hurt you." I'm not going to read the line because.
Oh yeah.
But she pretty much says, what if he said, a very racist thing about blacks, and it hits because you can see her, like it hits her. She's like, she knew because she's been on that same receiving end of this hatred, like and you can tell it hits her, like she knows what and just to see that hatred, it infuriates her. Even she was just trying to, and it's very interesting. And then you see another scene of the purifiers. You have the same people that killed the kids in the playground just driving around in a van, and they're hunting them. They're hunting mutants. They're hunting the X-Men.
And you don't really know what their goal is here. I mean, they killed the two kids, and they're talking about just doing surveillance, making sure that everybody's under what's going on, where everybody is. They're talking about taking out the dance instructor.
Just because she's a mutie lover. Like,
yeah.
I mean, and that's kind of how it works. Like you start going after, a certain type of people, and then you just keep going after new people, because anything about a very toxic person is that they always need, or in this case, somebody that's channeling to channel it, hey, it has to be channeled towards somebody. They always have to have victims. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So they're kind of constantly have to keep finding new victims. Hence the reason why the Nazis went after the Communist Party, went after the union workers or laborers union, whatever the hell it was called. And they kept going because he kept needing new things to hate, to keep people following his craziness.
You got to keep them riled up. You got to keep a common enemy, because then you're going to start, if you don't have that enemy, you're going to start looking at yourself eventually, and you're not going to like what you see.
Yeah. And I also like how it has, you have a scene where so Xavier's on TV arguing his point with Stryker. And I think that I like the scene with all the X-Men at home watching it.
Oh, that is such a good scene. I really enjoy that. It's basically on Frontline type of thing.
Yeah, it's very well done, and it's also very how they even say Stryker's winning because Stryker knows how to talk to the audience, and he's talking about fear, where Xavier's trying to do hope, but he doesn't know how to play to an audience. He doesn't know how to get people excited. And I mean, again, any good any good public speaker knows how to get people to want to listen. You gotta get that excitement, like doing a podcast. So
exactly.
And I love this. I like how they get so irritated what they're watching. And they're like, okay, we got to go train. And I do love seeing them put on their outfits for some reason. I really like these. I like this group of X-Men. We haven't mentioned, it's also Wolverine and Storm and Cyclops are part of this group too in this book.
Yeah, and this takes place after the Phoenix Saga, if I remember correctly.
Oh, that's why there's no Jean Grey, huh?
Yeah, and in this, it kind of seems like Cyclops and Storm are an item.
Yeah, that they don't really say anything. They don't show that to the very last page in the epilogue, but you are right.
Yeah, so I did have to do some research on that because, again, I'm not good with dates. And I thought that Dark Phoenix took place, was mid-'80s, but nope, I was wrong.
Phoenix Saga's first, and Dark Phoenix Saga is where she comes back.
Yeah, Dark Phoenix Saga, that was something different. But the original Phoenix Saga was before this. I've
never read it. I've always meant to read it on this show, but it hasn't happened yet.
It's not great.
I know who not to ask then.
Looking at it currently, it's not great.
I never read it, but it might happen.
But after they get all suited up, we have a little bit of discussion after the Xavier and Stryker debate on TV. Yeah, where Xavier acknowledges that Stryker was better.
I gotta ask, you think Xavier kept stopping him every time he started to talk?
Oh, I doubt it.
You don't think hey, I gotta say something too. What about your son, Stryker? What about your son? You don't think you're doing that?
He should have been, but no. Xavier's classy. He was just like, oh, shut up, man.
All right. I do like the training montage where they're in the training room and they have to do things differently, or they can't use their powers to exactly stop the way that they would normally. They have to use different methods. I thought that was cool. Like Wolverine can't cut out of the cage. He has to find a different way out of the cage.
Yeah, and they all, work as a team, but they change things up. They're thinking on the fly. That's what I really like about X-Men, the team dynamic.
It works well.
Oh, it really does.
It's really cool to see in this. And this is the part where it's kind of jumping back and forth between them training. It also shows Xavier, Cyclops, and Storm are in a car driving, and you have somebody, they blow up the car. And this is a powerful ass scene where you see Cyclops and they get out of the car. The car's just been in a car accident, and somebody just guns down Cyclops, Xavier, and Storm. And it is just really powerful.
Yep, and it sure looks like my boy there is using an almost like an AR-15 type assault rifle, but I'm sure it's perfectly legal.
And a rocket launcher. Too.
The rocket launcher. Who doesn't notice a rocket launcher in Central Park?
Oh, is that where this is?
Well, they said they were going to grab him outside of Central Park.
Oh, okay. So they probably, okay. I don't know much about New York, but I'm assuming New York is never that quiet.
No, I doubt it.
I've never been there.
I've never been, but I've known people that live there, and I've heard it's rarely quiet. There's a reason it has the nickname the city that never sleeps.
And just the scene when they finish training and they get the phone call and Nightcrawler picks up the phone, and just the way they drew his face when he gets the news just hits hard. Like the world just drops out from under him when, he tells the group that they're dead. And I like that.
Oh, it's very good. And the scene where Wolverine is standing in the doorway and he's just casting a long shadow and everybody is just kind of huddled together. Like, that's powerful stuff, man.
That fits Wolverine, too, because he's someone who's very old, who's seen a lot of death, caused a lot of death himself, but it still affects him greatly to see someone he sees, as a friend, as a mentor, just, being, had died.
Mm-hmm.
Except he doesn't. And then I also like what they do, because they also show, it says the next day, and it shows Kitty Pryde, or Ariel, as she's named in this book, sitting there crying about their deaths. And I like this. Like, you see the grief, you see the pain about how she's like, after all we've been through, to have them killed in a lousy car crash. And I think that's a very powerful little sentence there, because it's like, they fight all these things, and it's just something simple that, in this case, it wasn't simple, but they think it was something simple that killed them. And I think that's a very interesting thing.
Yeah, and she's talking with Ileana, right? Cyclops,
yes.
Or Colossus's sister.
Who later becomes Magic.
Yeah.
Way later, but yes. Think way later.
Probably way later. I don't know. Again, I suck at dates, but...
I'm also not good with my X-Men knowledge. Is not super good, unfortunately. But I know she's Magic because she was in the New Mutants movie that I just watched.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
And it's not... She becomes Magic in 1983.
Okay, so it was after this.
A year after this. So that's not very long ago.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind then. So it's interesting, and the whole reason she's like, I saw something strange, Kitty, and she wants to show her that they have like this camera hidden in the swamp that's pointed towards the house. And that's what kind of started to draw her attention, that it wasn't just a car accident, but there's something else going on, and I thought that was kind of cool.
Oh yeah, there's definitely surveillance going on, and it's just like kind of innocuous. It's set up in almost a duck blind type situation. So they short out the camera, which apparently I didn't know that, phasing through electronics would screw them up, but hey, whatever.
Oh, before we get far now, I do want to mention the line where Kitty Pryde and Ileana are talking about her crush on Peter, on Colossus. I like that they consider, and this is Kitty Pryde, they consider Peter an adult. Why I'm still their darling little girl. Crushes are cool, but falling in love for real, the penultimate no. And the ultimate, take a guess. I don't know, I just like that. But I don't do a very good girl impersonation, but
yeah, it's fine.
It's good.
It's real. It's a real conversation that would really happen, and probably something that would, Ileana would throw up to take her friend's mind off the pain for a while. Like, this is a very real, emotional storyline for me. Like, I feel like this is how this would play out, really.
It's very good. And then when it jumps back and it shows the X-Men, where Wolverine, Colossus, and Nightcrawler are at the scene of the car crash, and they're looking for evidence. And I like that, where Wolverine's like, there's corpses were found in the wreck, pal, but they're not they're not them. I like that.
Yep. Trouble is, their scents are wrong. And, Wolverine with his whole Wolverininess, can obviously smell. No, that's not our people.
But the line that I like, he's like, this is Wolverine, I staged more than a few such accidents in my day. Boy, this has all the earmark. Like, again, you gotta realize the guy's a fucking murderer.
And then Colossus immediately after, should we not tell the police? And Wolverine's like, nah.
Nope.
Oh, we're gonna handle this ourselves.
And I like how they realize they've been followed, so... there's a car not that far away that's been tracking them. So they get in costume really quick, apparently very quickly, because they're being watched, and all of a sudden they're in costume, and they just start ripping apart this car. Like, I like that.
Oh yeah,
cool moment.
Yeah, they just start destroying it, and all because Nightcrawler's keeping a watch out on top of a lamppost because he's Nightcrawler. That's what acrobats do, apparently.
Acrobat.
Yeah, Kurt Wagner was a circus acrobat.
That makes sense. Funny sense. And I like how the girl tries. So one of the Purifier tries to drive away in a car to crash into Colossus because she's like, oh, if I'm gonna die, I'm gonna take somebody with me. And Nightcrawler pulls her out of the car. They destroy the car. And these two guys in like Iron Man looking suits jump out of the car, and I'm like, they're like, oh, they were still in the car. And I'm like, how? How were you still in the car?
Well, they're in the fancy suits.
But I don't think there's enough room in that car. I don't know. It's one of those things that kind of hit me like it couldn't have been somewhere they were just nearby and they didn't notice them. But I guess, yeah, I don't know. It just bothered me.
Yeah, no, I get that. But then, of course, the Iron Man suits are causing problem for everybody. They're shooting in the energies, and then who should show up but our boy?
I like this. Like you have a panel here where it's just the two guys in their underwear with all the metal around them because Magneto just rips everything apart and then ties them in a cocoon with the metal. Like I like that.
That is just great. Like, even he's not even going lethal. Like, he's just like, nope, you get to be held in place. And the X-Men had that moment, like,
I don't know a whole lot about Magneto. Does he normally kill?
Well, not if he can help it. And especially in this case where he's going to want to talk to people.
I like how they know him as an enemy because, this has been 100 issues into X-Men at this point. But, they end up teaming up with him. Like, he says, like, Magneto is here as a friend and he'll have me an ally. And I think that's very powerful. Like, he saves them from these guys and he's trying to work with them. I like that.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, I'm here to do my thing. I'm trying to help you guys out. I am in this ridiculously fabulous outfit in broad daylight.
I like this outfit, though.
Oh, that outfit is so great. But come on, man. Magenta cape in broad daylight on Central Avenue, or in Central Park. Come on now. Come on.
And then it bounces back to where you have Kitty Pryde and Illyana are hiding in the swamp, watching that camera, waiting for whoever put it there to come back. And you have a really cool scene, which I didn't know she could do this, where Kitty Pryde phases into the ground and walks through the dirt.
Yeah, and it's interesting because she's talking about like how she has to hold her breath because she can't breathe while she's down in the dirt, and she's listening, trying to find out what's going on, which I don't know how well you can hear through dirt, but whatever. But the people that put the camera there, they're purifiers, and you got that lady from the car wreck showing back up with another one of the Iron Man suit guys.
I wish I knew.
And they find Illyana hiding in the reeds while Kitty's in the dirt.
It's pretty cool, and they shoot her.
Yeah,
they don't kill her, but you think they do for a second.
Oh yeah, and then somehow Kitty's in a tree.
Because she can phase, so she phases upwards. I guess I don't know. I got nothing. She does play a big part in this book, though. Like, I was surprised how big of a character, because she phases into the car, into the trunk. They turn the nerve gas on to kill her while she's in the trunk. Like, why would you have nerve gas in your trunk? But hey,
we're obviously going to the James Bond school of car gadgets.
Yeah, that's where I took it.
And then we go back to the X-Men, who have the two iron mummies in their library, because that's where you put interrogation experts. And you get one of the best interrogation scenes I have ever seen.
I mean, it looks brutal. It's very simple, but it looks brutal. You have Wolverine threatened with the claws. That's not that bad. But when Magneto's like, sure, I'll take care of this. And here the line. The purifier resists, but the outcome is never truly in doubt. First he, then his companion tell all they know. And you see this panel of Magneto, this guy is like laid across with metal all over the place, like stabbing into him. It looks like his fingers are being pulled backwards by metal. I mean, it just looks terrible.
Oh, yeah. Like, Wolverine is threatening physical pain by just shooting the claws up one side of his face and the other, and he's got the middle claw retracted, just waiting. That's great. But then Magneto goes and like, no, I'll show you how it's done. I know how to do torture right.
Yeah, it's powerful, and I mean, and I like that where they're asking, where the X-Men, because Magneto's like, once more, genocide in the name of God, a story as old as the race. And then Colossus, was this necessary? Wolverine being Wolverine, yep. And I like how they're really realizing, like, how are we better than them if we're doing this? I think that's very powerful.
And that you really kind of get the X-Men questioning their goals, like what they do and how they're different, from Magneto, but from the people that are persecuting them. And that's pretty powerful stuff.
And then should we talk about the most fucked up part of this entire comic?
Oh, are you talking about the
dream sequence
in Xavier's mind? Oh, yeah. Boy.
First, I have to mention, just because of it does show the World Trade Center in here in the first part of this. And it says the World Trade Center Manhattan.
Yep, hashtag never forget.
Yeah, and that's always powerful still. And then it shows Xavier being crucified by the X-Men, but the X-Men all look very kind of demonic. Like, Wolverine has vampire teeth, his mask is a little bit longer, Kitty Pryde's face is more ape-like, I guess is the way to put it, and she has longer elf ears. Like, everything is just very... They try to do what I guess what maybe people would consider demonic at one time or so.
Yeah, and it seems like these are his worst fears that are playing out. But it's kind of heavy-handed, too. I mean, you got Charles Xavier being put in a Christ-like, crucifixion, using specifically, biblical words. Like, they show the setup for the crucifixion, leading with, and they bring him unto the place Golgotha, which is where they crucified Christ.
Oh, I didn't know that. But
yeah,
that's history I don't follow.
Yeah, and it's pretty hard because, like, the X-Men, Nightcrawler comes and takes a bite out of Charles' neck. Kitty phases through his chest and rips out his heart. Wolverine slashes at him, coincidentally, in the side where Jesus got pierced by a spear.
Oh.
Storm strikes the cross with lightning, so he's just left hanging and burned. And this is all just... It's gnarly. It is gnarly because it feels like this is what, like, Charles' deepest fears are.
I really don't like it. And then you have, like, a godlike figure comes to him and then he rejects it and he goes right back into the torture. And, like, when I first saw it, I knew it was a dream sequence. I didn't know what the hell's going on. But it's just as you keep reading and it turns out that he was captured by Stryker. He's in a test tube full of water where they have him hooked up to these mental things, and they're just injecting these things into his brain to make him suffer.
Yeah, and it's also a form of brainwashing, too. Like, they're trying to get him to realize that, you know, he's going through all this abuse at the hands of mutants only to have a savior show up that, you know, also a very godlike figure that is, you know, trying to get him to flip sides, essentially.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's kind of disgusting. And they basically, you know, they got him all drugged up to the point where his psychic sensitivity is heightened. They're also torturing Cyclops and Storm, and their pain is going into Xavier because Xavier can't block it out, so that's just making it worse.
Really powerful. And then again, all of it in the name of God. Like, that's the part that really, I think, hits, too. Like,
that line from Stryker. Storm asks, "We have done you no harm. Why are you doing this?" And Stryker says, "Because you exist. And that existence is an affront to the Lord." Oh, that makes me angry.
Yeah, I mean, and then it goes into talk about, like, what Stryker did. Like, he was in the military, and he gets into a car accident so many years ago, and his wife is pregnant and gives birth after the car accident, and what is born is a mutant. So he calls it a monster, and he kills the baby because it's different.
Yes, he kills his own mutant child, and then his wife.
And he breaks her neck.
Oh my God! Puts her back in the car and light a match on the accident where gasoline is dripping, blowing himself to high hell, but also hiding the evidence.
And I love how, like, he becomes a drunk and alcoholic. He's beating people up. He gets kicked out of the army, hits rock bottom. Then he sees a thing about mutants, about Charles Xavier, and this is the line that I'm going to read from him. He says, "But could I have fathered such a creature? Was my life so wicked that the Lord sought to punish me through my son? And if so, why then let me live? If I was evil, shouldn't I have been condemned to eternal damnation?" He said, "I prayed for guidance. It was given me. The evil, the sin was Marcy's, not mine." And I think that's what's so powerful, too, is because it was nobody's sin. It was just what happened. And yet there has to be something that was evil. Somebody had to, being punished by God. Like, here's another line from here. "She was a vessel used by God to reveal unto me Satan's most insidious plot against humanity, to corrupt us through our children while they were still in the womb. The Lord created man and woman in his image. Blessed with his grace, mutants broke that sacred mold. They were creation not of God, but of the devil." And I think that's really powerful about that, because that line, I feel like, has been used throughout history by different people when they want to commit genocide.
Constantly.
And
again,
so
wrapped
great
in that cloak of righteousness.
Yeah, for no reason. And I mean, it makes Stryker such a hated character too, and and it's just, and he acts like he's everyone thinks he's this good guy and stuff, and he's a freaking murderer.
He's an unrepentant murderer. That's the worst problem. He sees absolutely no problems with what he's doing, and he attempts to justify it because he's talking after the whole dream sequence in the flashback. He's talking to Cyclops and Storm, and he's talking about, their histories and why, he's doing what he's doing and how he has Colossus' sister and Kitty. And he says, "When the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, Thou shalt smite them, and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, no show mercy unto them. And then it's just like, all right, I'm done, bye. Using scripture to justify murder is just, it's insidious. It is awful, and I hate it.
And it happens in real life, not just in comic books.
It happens every day.
And I mean, especially reading this in 2020, like, it's everything's been happening to us in our life. Like, this book even hits even more, and which we'll get to at the end. I'm saving it for the end of the episode. And when we finish this book, we'll go into...
Oh, yeah. I have my own personal connections to this stuff that we'll talk about a little later.
I'm just saving it. That way, if people don't want the full-blown political, they can get... they can listen to most of this episode.
Yeah.
And it just gets, like, when you see the car, when they're getting back with the purifiers, and they take Ileana out, they shoot the car to kill Kitty, find out Kitty face through, and as she's running through New York, she runs into a bunch of gangsters. And one thing about the gangsters I think is interesting is they're all different nationalities. If you look at them, they're all, like, one guy's wearing a turban, one guy you can tell is obviously white, one, you can tell they're all, and I think that was cool. Like, I didn't catch that right away, but they're not just, like, they didn't just decide to go with this one type of guy. Like, they could have went with so many stereotypes, but instead they picked somebody from every kind of culture that just these bad people. Yeah,
like, everybody that these races would have a problem with are all in one gang, and they all look like they're from the Warriors. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, bare-chested, wearing kerchiefs around their necks and open vests, and it's ridiculous and wonderful, and I love it.
I like how, like, she needs their help. Like, oh, we'll give you help, but I mean, since you're going to rape her first, and it's just like, it's just powerful. I mean, it doesn't go anywhere because the purifier shows up and ends up guns them all down. Kitty Pryde phases, but it's still cool.
Oh, yeah. And it goes to show, it's not just mutant that these purifiers have a problem with. It's everybody who's not them.
Yeah, and which is kind of how it works. Like, you look at, like, with Nazi Germany, he was only going after these people, after the Jews, after this. But as time went on, he was only interested in blonde hair, blue eyes. Like, it was just craziness.
Yep. And, of course, you see it now.
Yeah.
I mean, this book, it was made in 1982, but man, is it still topical.
Oh, yeah, that's why I thought
some of the stuff hits.
To record it. And because I really wanted to get it re-recorded.
Oh, of course.
That bothers me immensely when Technical airs. But I like how you have Kitty Pryde escaping. Like, you have her steal some coins from a payphone to make a call. A payphone, if you guys remember those things. And I like she makes a line there. It's like, I'm sorry, M.A. Bell, or whoever, I think it's M.A. Bell.
Yep, Ma Bell.
That's funny. I don't think that company even exists anymore.
Oh, God, no.
I remember Bell, but not Ma Bell.
Not Ma Bell was just what everybody used to call, like, Bell Company. Jesus Christ, I'm dating myself here.
It's good. Like, and one of the really powerful moments I felt in here is as she's escaping, she runs into a subway train, and a cop tries to protect her, and the purifiers gun him down.
Yeah, don't even, have a care about the cop. And she's like, look, do what you want to me, but please help the officer. He isn't a mutant. He's not your enemy. He's dying. And then the purifier says, and his death beauty will, at what'll appear to be your hand, will serve our cause as effectively as your death. And that's chilling. That is absolutely chilling.
It's really good. Like, and it doesn't go well for them because Magneto shows up, takes the train and rips them out of it, and they get beat up by the X-Men because the rest of the X-Men show up. But it's still really cool, and they save the officer too. Magneto pulls the bullet out of his body, and then they take him to a hospital. And I thought that was really cool.
Oh yeah, and then Kurt takes one of the guys and bamps them into Rikers Island. Like, that's great. And then they go off on a magic carpet ride.
Yep, we're part of the subway train. We're part of the subway. We're part of the train. Kind of cool.
Yeah, it's great. Like, you almost wish that Magneto would use his powers more ridiculously to, like, fly through New York City on a piece of metal, like Aladdin showing people new worlds. It's wonderful.
I can show you the world. Well, I mean, more like the Marvel version, be like, here are Daredevil's over here, and there's Luke Cage and Iron Fist, here's the X-Men over here, Spider-Man's right there, Captain America's over here too. Like, that's a more correct version, I think.
That'd be great. But no, it's just a little side thing while they get the guy out of the hospital.
I do like how then you have Xavier, where he finally been converted after all that abuse and brainwashing, and all I think of is, there are 4 lights.
Oh.
I know you get that reference. So.
Oh, I do. I do. That is such a good episode of Star Trek. But, yeah, I mean, especially considering that Patrick Stewart played Xavier, like, that is very appropriate.
And that's just what stuck with me. And I do love that scene, though, when that happens. And it's just, like, after, they've been sitting here working at him for so long, and they do brainwash him, but not completely. He tries, like, they want him to hit Cyclops and Storm with a psychic blast to kill them, and they think they're dead. Spoiler, they're not. But it's so powerful. And it also shows you what brainwashing and like that type of stuff can do. If you keep doing it to a person, you can change people in a way that they don't want to be, just because you force the brain to survive.
And the worst thing about this is that you see Charles hit him with that blast. They have blood coming out of their nose, and in the next panel, he is just elated. He is smiling so wide.
It's fucked up.
It's heartbreaking to look at that. But even subconsciously, he pulled his punch. He wasn't going to kill his people.
But he did enough to save them, so that way they would think they were dead so they could escape.
Which is great. And then the X-Men go on the offensive.
I like this, where Kitty Pryde ends up jumping into a limo, grabs the guy, and phases him out of the limo.
Oh, it's so good.
And then Nightcrawler threatens him just by showing his teeth and to get him to talk. Like, all that is so good. And
getting closer and closer to the neck. Yes. Oh, man.
I mean, I love Nightcrawler. I would love to buy his first appearance if it wasn't in a super key issue that costs way too much money for me.
Oh, yeah.
Giant size X-Men #1, by the way.
So, Christmas is coming up, folks, if you want to get your old pal Mike something.
It won't be Christmas by the time you're hearing this. It'll probably be after. So...
Some gift-giving holiday is coming up, folks.
And someday I'll buy it. I've had chances. I just haven't done it yet. And when they're raising the elevator up, so they go in this elevator to drop off the bodies, to throw them in the incinerator. And I love how the elevator, they meant it to go down. It just starts going up and up and up and up and up and out of the building. And the one purifier that's been off and on working with Stryker that we've seen, she jumps out of the elevator and lands on the roof to try to escape, while they rescue Ileana and Cyclops and Storm, and then they find out they're not actually dead. Magneto somehow electrocutes them to life. I don't know, but we'll go with it.
Yeah, just let it work, man. Maybe it did something with the iron in their blood. I don't know. Magneto, like, this time his powers were kind of ill-defined, and, like, we know metal, but it seemed like he gained a new fabrication of that during the 80s, and, like, it seemed like every other issue he was more powerful than he was before.
He changed a lot.
Yeah, but that's fine.
And then it jumps to where Stryker's at Madison Garden getting ready for a big, sermon, which I know you had a lot of big sermons with Jimmy Graham in the 70s and 80s, I want to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Billy Graham, Jimmy Swaggart, all of those guys. They used to have, like, just these huge ministries. And Pat Robertson with the 700 Club. Like, it was... And this is what it was like there. Like... When he goes on stage and, all the spotlights are shining, there are hundreds of people, it really was like that. Like, it was not a great time.
No, I don't remember it very well because I was born in 87, so, a little bit after that.
Yeah, this book came out when I was 2 years old, so yes, I am old, but that's fine. And, oh, man.
It's powerful.
It's
like, they have Xavier being hooked up into the psionic device to amplify his powers, and and then that mutant that we're talking about jumping the roof, she comes to Stryker, and it is showing the audience. It's showing that there's senators sitting in the audience, and they make a comment. Well, the president's a fair-minded man. He believes the reverend views deserve a hearing. Like, again, that's getting a little dangerous there, but it shows that. It shows the audience getting, like, really excited, and you even have the cops say, "Crowd's eating it up." I don't know, partner, that preacher scares me. And he starts going on about how he hates mutants, and mutants are monsters, and that, God is punishing us, and all this other, bullshit that people would do in this situation. And as you show the device being turned on, you see a random guy who just looks like a normal kid, almost dying, having because he starts bleeding and stuff because it's hurting the mutants what they're doing. I think that's powerful.
Yeah, and like, because this kid is such a normal looking kid, like, he starts bleeding, Nightcrawler's like, summon an ambulance, and then some dude's like, hey, that's Nightcrawler, one of the X-Men, but what happened to the kid? Did the mutants attack him? And Nightcrawler's like, nope, I'm out, just pieces out real quick.
Well, again, it just shows you what happens in real life with racism and hatred, and how people, don't wait to listen. They just start shouting.
Yeah.
On their own
and it's not like we've seen that though recently at all. But then as you come to realize when Nightcrawler's ears start bleeding, this psionic blast is affecting mutants.
It's good.
And it is so interesting. And then Magneto just makes the best entrance ever.
The one line that I thought really sticks with me is you have the guy talking to the center, and the center's like, no, damn it, see? Magneto replaced the roof, good as new. He made an entrance, not an attack.
Yeah.
And I think that's very interesting, because he could have just ripped apart the building, but instead he just makes a hole, comes in, and puts it back together.
Yep. And Magneto wants to be heard. Like, he's like, nope, this is awful. This is horrible. You guys shouldn't do this. And Stryker immediately goes on the attack. Like, oh, look, Magneto, most feared of a fearsome race, self-styled overlord of Earth, enslaver of its people. And wow, that is some rhetoric, let me tell you.
And he hits him with a psychic blast and almost kills him. And then you have the crowd carrying signs, and they're ready to kill Magneto. And he's trying to hold them back, but he really can't because he's so weak. And I love how you have another scene where the senator ears start bleeding too, showing he's a mutant too. And it's the police that then stand up for Magneto and say, hey, leave him alone. Like, you're not going to hurt him.
Supposed to be a church service, not a damn circus. That's great.
And then it goes back to the X-Men, taking out the Purifiers, but they're... So you have the X-Men fighting the Purifiers, and they're injured because of the psionic ability is hurting them, making them not be able to fight at their normal prowess. And I think that's a really cool moment, too.
Yeah, like you basically have the X-Men going in and just not being 100% on par, so they just gotta do their best.
And I love the part when the Purifier lady you've seen, who's murdered mutants and everything, her nose starts bleeding.
Oh, man.
And
oh, man.
You realize that she's a mutant, too.
And she goes to Stryker. Oh, man. Like, oh, God.
It's good.
Like, it's just, look, we're your faithful. I believe in you. Does that mean nothing? And he's just like, nah, it sucks. So he throws her off this platform, and she breaks her neck. She's dead.
Yeah, and they catch it on camera.
Oh, yeah. The way the camera follows her down and the way that they showed that in the book, that's really cool.
I love that because it's so powerful. He just murders somebody. And I love that. Like because it shows you what kind of person he is. I mean, he thinks he's doing it for God, but really it's just showing he's just a psychopath using God as his excuse to commit, murder.
Yup. And then there's the nicest little bit of fiction in this entire book. Magneto says, if this, then the holy word, Reverend, that any oppose you must die. And the crowd starts going crazy, shut up, this is your fault. And one guy in the crowd says, wait a minute, what he's saying makes sense. That wouldn't happen. Ever.
No, not the people that are in this, that would be in this situation.
No, this crowd is packed with zealots, and zealots don't really change their opinion at all, as we've, seen.
Yeah, and I like it. I really do. And the part where the cops are still protecting Magneto, and you have the X-Men going back they trick Xavier and are able to knock him out to destroy the machine, and then save themselves and save the rest of the mutants.
Yeah, and all's well that ends well, kinda.
And when they go on stage to argue with Stryker, and I think that is so good, where they're like, we deserve to die just because we were born differently. And there's a great line when they're arguing with Stryker where he points, which is a meme I've seen around, he points to Nightcrawler like, human? You dare call that human? And he's just pointing at it, and it's so good. And Kitty Pryde's like, you're more human than you are. And then he pulls out a gun, and he's going to shoot the X-Men. And I'm thinking to myself, well, two of these guys would be just fine. You shoot Wolverine, no problem. You shoot Colossus, no problem. You shoot the other three, and they're in trouble.
Yeah, and he's about to do it. He's about to do it.
I love that. And he cocks the gun, and then you see it says bang, and then he's the one that got shot by a cop.
Mm-hmm.
And normally, in this day and world, it's a little, with all the police shootings that have happened and everything. But hey, in this case, the guy was armed and he was pointing the gun at somebody. So it's interesting to see how different this would have been seen in 1982 and in 2020 with everything happening, how our mindset is a little different, even though, in my opinion, in this situation, the cop did the right thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what
He shot somebody who was about to shoot an unarmed little girl.
Yeah, and I love that, where he's like, but the cop shot the Reverend. He's like, yep, who was about to shoot. You just said. And I love this. If that's the word of God, it sure changed some since Sunday school. I like that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. And what about the muties? What about them? They've done as much or as little as you clowns. Nice. Nice. It's
good. It's really powerful book. And then when you have the epilogue where they're all at Xavier's mansion, and there's a point where Xavier's kind of ready to have Magneto lead them, to have the X-Men join Magneto, because he just, after everything that happened, everything he did, he's not the same.
Yeah.
And it's only because the X-Men want to follow his Xavier's dream that Xavier is able to finally come back to his senses.
Yep. And it's a very traumatic experience for Xavier, and this is going to take, months, maybe years for him to get over. But I don't know.
It's really good.
It's good, and he almost joins Magneto. Xavier almost joins Magneto, but doesn't.
I think that's so powerful too.
Oh, so good.
And then you have a small scene. I mean, closer to what we were mentioning earlier, how Jean Grey is dead at this point, because on the balcony you have Cyclops and Storm holding hands and kind of kissing and having a tender moment talking about, and they make a line where Storm is, and from that caring comes love, Cyclops, which makes the world go round. If only that were so. And I think, and that's the last line of this book. And I think that's very powerful too.
It really is, because it even ties back to the title. God loves, man kills. And it's kind of saying, love it's great, but it's not enough to make everything right. And God, it's really hard to think about that, especially in a time like this. It's such a rough world out there, and it's just gotten worse since 82. I would love to find out what people think of this book more often now. This is a hard book to come by.
So if you read this book, guys, or are interested, please send us an email at gamesmymomfound@yahoo.com. I will read it at some point.
Yes, please. Feel free to tell us about our lack of X-Men knowledge. I am waiting with my glasses to push them up and will actually any responses into oblivion, but it's a hard book to find. You cannot purchase it digitally at any.
Oh, you can't?
No, I looked for it. I couldn't find it.
Oh.
And the actual trade paperbacks are hard to come by. They're costly. I think it's out of print.
And I don't see this coming back not right now.
It should, though. This is when we need it.
Yeah, but it's not the most. I can see it. I know it did get republished a couple. $35 at Target.
Yeah, that's kind of pricey for a short story. This is not a long novel at all.
Yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, you're right. It's not cheap. And on Amazon at the time of this recording, $35. You can buy it on Kindle and Comixology though for $4. Hardcover is $75. Paperback is about $15.
I couldn't find it. Well,
I mean, I didn't read a proper copy. Let's just say that. But
that's fine though. That's what libraries are for.
Yeah. Okay. We'll go with that. That's how I read this book. But also, one thing I do want to mention quickly for those that are big into comics, this was originally supposed to be drawn by Neil Adams, was supposed to be involved with this, but he dropped out of the project before, and originally Angel was supposed to be in this book too, which I would have loved because I like Angel a lot.
It would have been pretty cool. I mean, Angel is cool, but I don't know, man. I feel like the team that was here, everything just works so well.
And it does.
If you would have subbed somebody out for Angel, it wouldn't feel the same, probably.
I just like Angel.
Which is fair.
I also have, I don't have his first appearance, of course, but I have the first appearance of Archangel. If that counts for anything.
And Archangel is awesome.
I do need to someday read some of his books. All right, and I think we should go to Shelf or Box.
All right, yeah, let's Shelf or Box.
I'll go first. I have read this book 3 times now, and I read it earlier this year before 2020 really went to hell. I read it mid 2020 again. I mean, this would have been that June. I probably last time I read this until we decided to re-record this. I read it the 3rd time. Still going on the shelf. I mean, this book actually even means more to me now in October of 2020 than it did in like March of 2020, because so many things have happened and are happening in this world where this book just makes more sense to me and kind of has more of an emotional involvement to me now, or emotional impact, than it did when I first read this. So going on the shelf, glad I read it. We'll recommend it to people, and maybe people can learn something from this damn book. How about you, Kenneth?
Oh, I would absolutely throw this 100% on my shelf, and it wouldn't stay there long because I keep loaning it out to people so that they can read it. This would be one that I recommend a lot. And, we're getting to the end here. I think now's a great time for me to bring up why this book personally means a little bit to me.
Well, far enough.
So, as I'm recording this now, I am currently, I was born, raised, and still live in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Y'all can try to find me. I don't care. But as you may or may not have heard, we've had a little bit in these past few months. And a lot of this stuff just really hits home because I am surrounded by it on a daily basis. And I've done what I can. I have marched. I've protested. I have pretty much played the Xavier part, like just trying to help, doing what I can, and just seeing all of this stuff in this book play out around me in a very similar fashion. It's hard to watch, it's hard to read, but it's good, and more people need to read this book and immerse themselves in what's happening in the world, because if you have a problem with William Stryker, but you're still somehow voting for the current regime, you don't get it.
And I think that's one thing that's also so powerful about this book is that you really can see it. Like I try not to get too political on this podcast because that's not why people are here, but this is a little different because it does. But it's just one of those things that when you see, because they always make the comment where history repeats itself. And I think that's also what the X-Men were trying to tell you. And it's something that I've been, as 2016 happened and life went its way, I used to ask the question, well, how did Hitler get all these people to follow him? And then as I understood a lot more how hate can work. And I mean, it's also what, they were trying to teach us here with the whole, what Stryker is doing, where hate can make people do things that they would never mean to do. But when you get that right person to get them going, terrible things can happen.
Yeah, and it doesn't take much.
No.
Like, if current history has taught us anything, all it takes is for somebody to play to your fears and, play to your insecurities about your life and give you a common enemy, and most people will follow you into the very depths of hell itself.
And the other thing about manipulation, which is what happens in this book and happens in real life, and someone who survived it, one thing that every good manipulator does is they disconnect you from everyone that they can, for only you can listen to their word. Like to give a historical context, Hitler, he bought all the radio stations. He bought the newspaper companies. So everyone was just telling him everyone just saying what he wanted to say, and it got to the point where people only believed stuff that he was saying too, because before then they this newspaper bashed him. They're just fake news, and then he bought them up, and hey, now they're telling the truth. Like, no, he just manipulated what you heard, so you only believe what was happening, and you didn't know what was going on around you. I was with someone for about a year who tried to disconnect me from my family, disconnect me from my friends, made everyone who knew me hate me. So that way, all I had was this one person to connect to, is one person to talk to, and that's how that's what happens in so many cases. Manipulation at its finest.
And that is very much what Stryker does to Xavier in this. He manipulates Charles's brains into realizing that everybody he loves is trying to go out and hurt him, and that Stryker is the only one that can protect him from it. And it's insidious. It's hard to watch and read play out, and oh god, this book is just on so many levels. It is such a haunting and honestly terrifying story of how the bad guys in the X-Men universe are mostly always just going to be human. The people who don't like others. And, it's hard. It's hard. Like, it was a very uncomfortable read for me just because I'm so... I don't want to say...
Happened.
Yeah, I don't want to... Well, it's not just Kenosha, it's the entire world, too. Yeah. And it's, just watching everything play out on such a national level makes you sick. It makes you sick.
That's why I recommend. That's why because I had read this book before, as I've said, and when everything was getting worse, I'm like, yeah, we need to recover this.
Yeah, and I'm really glad to have been on this episode because, man, do I got some feelings.
I'm just, because this, like I said, this probably won't be, because depending on how my schedule works, this won't be up to, I'm assuming, December or January or later. So, because I have a lot of stuff in the pipeline. So maybe when you hear this, things are different. I hope. Otherwise, I don't know.
We can hope, but you know what? Even if they are a little bit different, they're not fixed.
No, they won't be anytime soon. The only way, in my opinion, society will ever be fixed, and we can do what Star Trek did, where the world comes together for one common goal, which was to do more, to be better, and to get rid of currency, and to get rid of everything that Star Trek does. I mean, again, it's a pipe dream in a sense, but it's something that I always believe that's the only way we're ever going to have the real peace that we deserve.
Well, that sounds like socialist talk, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I also, since you brought up, I'm gonna mention this real quick. I love how people compare because socialism and communism are on that same level, but they're they're different sides of that level. Like, it depends how far you go. And I think a lot of people don't understand socialism, where the government helps you, but you still have a stake. Communism, where the government kind of owns you, and everything you do is for the better of the government, which unfortunately, as they've seen, doesn't really work. The countries that have done it, like Russia, the prime example, it didn't really work for them.
Well, I mean, if you actually go and read the Communist Manifesto, which I have several times, I used to check it out from the library. Once I heard that if you check it out, you get put on a list. So I used to do it, and I used to read it a lot. But what happened over in Russia, it's not real communism. It's a perversion of it.
Even Lenin was part of this.
Well, I mean, it's ultimately corrupted by people.
Yeah. Like,
human greed is always going to corrupt an ideal communism. Well, not always, but in the examples that have been put on the main stage. And, look at, the co-op communes that are out there. The people that are, on a small scale, bunch of people living on a farm, that's communism right there. Everybody works for the greater good.
Okay. It's interesting.
That's at its heart communism. And that's pretty dope when it works. And sometimes it does. It does it on a big scale. Yeah,
it's always something interesting to me that how people confuse socialism and communism, because they're on the same scale, but they're at different ends of that scale. And the same thing with fascism and conservatism. I mean, those are just both fascism and communism are just the extremes of those circumstances.
Yeah, and let's be honest, right now they're not looking too different. Honestly, I mean, we are getting to the point of. There are definitely fascist overtones in the current administration, and I'm not having it.
No, but I'm very hopeful that
I'm hopeful too,
because, and I also I always say that I can't wait to see the history book from this period of time in 2030, 2035, when enough time has passed that people that are in office are long gone, are dead. Time has went that way, and then we can look back at it and go, "This is what happened. This is what went on. This is what we can do better. This is what we learn." And because I look at that with history for everything that happens, every time you have a president, I don't care who they are. I always say the same thing now. Wait till history tells the books 10 years after they're out of office. That's because that's when you really get to see what happened. Not during the administration, when it's all over and you can put the pieces together.
Yeah, that's when things start coming out that happened that we didn't hear about. And
that's just I will still say to the day, Nixon was not a terrible president. He made some huge mistakes, but he also opened up China. He did a couple good things, but all that, unfortunately, he's remembered for is Watergate. And that's just one thing I always think interesting, because he wasn't a good president. I'm never going to say it's good, but he did do things that should be recognized, but all he's recognized for is Watergate because he was an idiot.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, he's no Ronald Reagan, who was the devil.
Again, I think I will say almost every president has very bad. But again, when you're running a country, you're never going to be able to be. You're always going to have things that aren't going to mess with some people, because that's just running a country.
Oh yeah, and that's it's what happens when you elect one person to. Yeah, I'm not even. You know what? I'm not going to go down that road. Because we'll be sitting here for another couple hours as I lay out my multi-point, brilliant political, schema to put this country back on the right track. And
which we're not.
We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. Tune into my next podcast appearance on my own show, which I don't have yet, in which I will have a 15-part series explaining the optimum way for America to be run.
There's some people who listen, I'm sure. All right, I think that about wraps up this episode, and I think we should go to plugs. But so I want to thank everyone for listening. I want to thank Kenneth for coming back on. And if you enjoyed this episode, we have tons of other episodes for you to check out. We do games every week. We do comics. We do the movies. I'm currently going through the MCU movie, and there should be hopefully by the time you hear this, Phase 2 should be done or close to being published at this point. It's already recorded. But hey, so definitely check that out. And if you enjoyed this, tell a friend, tell an enemy, tell people on Facebook. It's a great way to help support the show. It's just let people know about games my mom found. The more downloads I get, the more I can eventually do with the show, and the more content you guys will receive. If you like hearing this voice, one day you might hear me on Twitch or YouTube. Just got to get me. Just got to keep getting people listening to us. And also want to give a shout out to our awesome intro and outro, courtesy of Bulby, a.k.a. Mike Stoney from CP Bite the Bullet, Song the Cool Kid Squad. And last thing I want to say, if you enjoyed this, please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm constantly posting new images and posting when the upcoming episodes come up. We do 2 episodes a week. We will talk to you guys later. Bye, everybody.
Have a great day.